Hey guys, today we're in the middle of the state of Mississippi, real close to the community of Standing Pine, Mississippi. And we're here to visit the grave of the 53rd governor of the great state of Mississippi, Ross Barnett. So come along with us. Let's go explore. You know, I'm going to tell you a little bit about Governor Barnett as we walk around his family's cemetery, and we'll do it as respectfully as we can. You'll see some interesting graves of family members as we walk along the way. So if you think you like this kind of content, I need you to boop that like button and maybe even subscribe. I tried to get my son to do a little narration as we walk along here, but well, we're not quite ready for that. Maybe one day. Let's move along to the governor. Governor Ross Barnett was born on January 22nd, 1898, probably pretty close to where we are now. He was the youngest of 10 children born to John William Barnett, who was a Confederate veteran, and Virginia Ann Chadwick. Barnett served in the Army during World War I, and he then worked a series of odd jobs while attending Mississippi College. He graduated in 1922, and he attended law school at the University of Mississippi and graduated from there in 1929. He then married a school teacher named Mary Crawford. During the next 25 or so years, Barnett became one of the state's most successful trial lawyers, often earning more than $100,000 per year, which of course was a lot of money in those days. In 1943, Barnett was elected president of the Mississippi Bar Association. His interest in politics was born as he followed his brother around, who was running for a state senate seat. Barnett never ran for any political offices until in 1951 he unsuccessfully ran for governor and was defeated, and was also defeated again in 1955. The third attempt was successful for Ross Barnett as he was elected governor while running on a white separatist platform in 1959. Barnett was governor for a single term, and he's rather infamously remembered for ordering, or at least allowing, the arrest of around 300 Freedom Riders when they arrived in Jackson, Mississippi. If you don't know what Freedom Riders were, goodness gracious, at least Google it. He used the Mississippi Sovereignty Commission to begin funding the Citizens Council, which was a committee that was dedicated to preserving racial integrity, or segregation. The Sovereignty Commission and some owners of some Jackson media outlets had a hold on Governor Barnett, and they encouraged him to resist forced integration laws from the federal government. And of course, Governor Barnett did just that. In 1962, Governor Barnett tried to prevent an African American named James Meredith from enrolling in the University of Mississippi. Now, the Ole Miss riot story didn't just happen in 15 minutes. Mr. Meredith tried to enroll in the university, was eventually turned down, tried the courts, and was essentially turned down in the state courts. And finally, on September 10th of 1962, the United States Supreme Court ruled that the university must admit James Meredith as a student. On September the 26th, Governor Barnett defied this order and sent state troopers to prevent Meredith from entering the campus and, of course, to control the growing crowd. Now, the riot at Ole Miss is a much deeper story that you just can't do justice in about 30 seconds on YouTube. But I will say this, it probably would never have happened if Governor Barnett would have behaved differently, the university would have behaved differently, the Jackson media outlets would have behaved differently, and once on location, the federal marshals would have acted differently. The riot at Ole Miss resulted in the deaths of two men, Paul Girard, a French journalist, and a local Oxford man named Ray Gunter. And in the middle of all that was Governor Ross Barnett, who the night before the riot was at an Ole Miss LSU football game that was taking place in Jackson, and he was asked to speak. And he got up and repeated what was essentially a campaign speech, but if you find some of this on YouTube, it really takes on an eerie sort of I hate to use the analogy, but almost a Nazi-like rally. A really weird vibe for sure. At that speech, he basically vowed segregation forever, but he had already been in negotiation with the Kennedy administration about how he was going to allow the enrollment of Mr. Meredith. You can also find on YouTube phone conversations between Governor Barnett and President Kennedy and Attorney General Robert Kennedy discussing how they're going to allow the marshals to interact with him at Ole Miss. Governor Barnett was trying to convince them to have marshals pull a gun on him. Actually, they were talking about having one marshal pull his gun on him where the governor could step aside and allow Mr. Meredith to enter the administration building. But the governor wanted all the marshals to pull their weapons so he could look better. The Kennedys, of course, rejected this idea. I really encourage you to do a little research of your own on the Ole Miss riot and perhaps decide for yourself the several different instances that I think the riot could have been stopped if certain people would have just behaved differently. The couple museums on the campus of the University of Mississippi are a great place to start. Now, this is, of course, my opinion, but I certainly lay a large part of the responsibility for that riot at the feet of Ross Barnett. After his term as governor was up in 1964, Barnett resumed his law practice. During the 1964 trial of Byron De La Beckwith, he's the guy that killed NAACP Field Secretary Medgar Evers. During that trial, the former governor interrupted the testimony of Evers' widow to shake Beckwith's hand. Beckwith, of course, was not convicted. Ross Barnett ran for governor a fourth and final time in 1967. He finished fifth in a field of 7 Democratic candidates, even after, well, rather ironically for me, enlisting the campaign help of James Meredith. Ross Barnett did have some positive accomplishments during his term as governor. The state added around 40,000 new jobs. They established a youth affairs department and constructed industrial parks throughout the state. But these accomplishments are greatly overshadowed by his involvement in all these other activities. In fact, it was probably Barnett's involvement with the Kennedys in negotiations before the Meredith affair that led to his political demise. Attorney General Kennedy had talked with the governor more than 12 or 13 times by phone before and during the enrollment of Mr. Meredith. Robert Kennedy was on campus giving a speech before about 6,000 students when he gave the details of these negotiations, which of course ruined the governor's political career. See, what Governor Barnett was looking for was a way out. If you'll read the book An American Insurrection, The Battle of Oxford, Mississippi, 1962, you'll find out that Ross Barnett desperately wanted the Kennedys to flood Mississippi with combat troops because that's the only way he could tell his white segregationist backers, hey, I did everything I could. I fought them, but to prevent bloodshed in the end, I made a deal. Well, this video is about 3 minutes longer than I wanted it to be, but I really hope you've learned a little history today, or at least learned a little bit about Mississippi's 53rd governor, Ross Barnett. Thank you.